Hello, Yeah We Read It listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Yeah We Read It, the podcast that I just said twice. I am...
Woohoo! That's a pro, baby.
Thank you. I am one of your hosts, Maggie.
And I'm also a host, and I'm Laura.
And we kind of agreed before we came on, we're in a little bit of a silly mood, so sorry if this is like a slam dunk episode for you guys.
Oh, every time we're in a silly, goofy mood, Maggie, the episodes are donks.
They absolutely. We are LeBron James, and you are the hoop, and we are sending that ball through the hoop.
And we're getting a straight... Two points? Is it always 2 points for a basket, or one? One and then three for the...
2 points, yeah. 2 points and then three. There's the
three for
three-pointer.
I love sports, as you may have told by my questions there.
And I love sports now, too, because I figured out at 30 years old that you can kind of bet on sports.
Yeah, bet on it. That's what Troy Bolton was singing about in High School Musical, too.
All the time. Laura, have you heard about sports gambling and how you can do it every day, Maggie, on your phone?
I've exclusively only heard about sports betting from you. You could be an advocate.
Thank you. And if you want to support our podcast, DraftKings, Maggie and Laura are looking to represent the female, non-binary, lesbian, straight community.
checkbox.
Every single person.
every community that one of us could possibly belong into, we will represent.
But you know who is someone I bet would love sports gambling? Our protagonist of the day, Jane Eyre. Actually, I don't think she would like it.
I thought you were gonna say the authors, because boy were they reaching in some parts of this book.
Oh my god. Yeah, you guys are so lucky we're in a silly mood today. Because I'm sorry, my plain Jane was, it was not fun.
It was pretty plain, I'll say it. And like the thing is it started out pretty cool, and then it just kind of got to the point where I was like, what the fuck is the point here?
I know. I was really excited actually too, because I had read the original Jane Eyre earlier this year.
Yeah.
And that was pretty paramount and fundamental to getting over my breakup, because I mean Jane Eyre's just kind of like a girl who does it alone and figures it out and kind of lands on her happiness. So I was like, oh, fuck yeah, this rules. There's like one quote in the book that I really like, that she's like not living the ideal life she wants to live in the actual Jane Eyre book. Mm. And she is like, whatever is meant to return to me will. And I really liked that because she was like not teaching as a governess. Anyways, I was really excited about this.
We should say that this book is a reimagining of Jane Eyre as a concept and character. That's what's going to make that sentence make sense.
Exactly. It is reimagining the original Jane Eyre, which Yeehaw Meg, that's me, read earlier. But this one's got some ghosts in it.
Here's the thing. I was really excited when the ghost plotline was introduced, because I was like, that actually is pretty fun. I feel like we have not read a YA book on this podcast that had a heavy ghost plotline. Or is there many that do have heavy ghost plotlines?
I guess that's true. The Vampire Diaries had like the kitsune spirits.
That's different.
Which might be as close as I can think as ghosts. But no actual full-blown hauntings.
Yeah, so we're just we have to get into this,
absolutely,
Maggie, because we're gonna get mad as we read this. Mm-hmm. So we learn, obviously, as you said, reimagining of Jane Eyre. We also learned that King George, he was the Mad King because he was able to see ghosts. We get a little logic and reason behind it. We're back in our historical fiction realm. We introduced Jane Eyre, who is a poor orphan, and she is best friends with Charlotte Bronte. They're at school together called Lowood, and we learned that there's been a murder. So I think that's a pretty strong start.
Mr. Brocklehurst, who is this professor at Lowood, he's dead. Charlotte's kind of thinking it might be Jane. She also does mention that the RWS Society for Wayward Spirits is coming to talk to the dead later, and a reason Charlotte kind of believes it might be Jane who killed this professor is Jane's really squeamish. She's like, I don't want to deal with the RWS.
Exactly. And the society, the RWS, it's like Ghostbusters but Victorian in this book. Pretty cool, pretty fun. And Charlotte is like, I'm going to solve this murder of Mr. Brocklehurst, and I'm certain that Jane did it, which I also kind of love that we have almost a frenemies aspect here. Mm-hmm. At least what I thought was going to be a frenemies thing. That is not what happens at all, which I was very disheartened about.
They're not frenemies. They are maybe just like a female friendship where they're pseudo jealous of each other.
Yeah, it also,
groundwork.
Yeah, you know, I feel like their friendship isn't fleshed out enough. If
No,
you ask
absolutely
me,
not.
But whatever.
So while Jane is actually stressed out about the society coming, it is revealed that she can see ghosts. She goes to this pub. The society shows up because they are trying to detain this ghost named Claire Doolittle, who is kind of being a menace to the pub.
Hey, same girl.
Hey, you get 1 Four Loko at me.
Give me a vodka soda.
True, I'm seeing ghosts at that point.
Refills constantly. I'm throwing shit everywhere, just like Claire.
So Claire does get captured by the society because Claire takes a minute, like Maggie, to tell Jane, wow, you're really pretty. Hey, haven't we been there?
We love you, Claire. More Claire in this book, honestly.
But there won't be any Claire. The society man who captured the ghost realizes that Jane can see ghosts, and she might be pretty necessary to the society because they are actually super underfunded right now. They kind of got some beef with the current king who's taken over, and he's taken a lot of their funding away.
Exactly. And the society, these Ghostbusters, they're able to use little objects to trap the ghost's spirit in. They trap her with a pocket watch. So that's their whole deal. And Jane also has an actual best friend, which is the ghost of a 14-year-old girl that she was friends with when she was 14, named Helen. Another plot line that I thought was going to be awesome. It kind of didn't go anywhere. And Jane says, the society is probably going to be coming to Lowood to look for me and figure out, Mr. Brocklehurst's situation. And Jane's like, we should think about leaving Lowood. We're old enough now, Helen, that we can leave Lowood.
They should absolutely leave Lowood. And also, if they murder Brocklehurst, that's completely fine. He killed 26 girls by just kind of ignoring them having a disease.
Yeah. We get introduced to Alexander, which is the society agent, and he's walking down Lowood seeing all of the ghosts of children that Lowood has killed. Not Lowood, that Mr. Brocklehurst has killed. And it's actually a really funny scene because Mr. Brocklehurst is demanding that they figure out who killed him, but these children are well, he killed me. What the fuck?
And also, Charlotte, not a girl's girl, tells Alexander she suspects it's Jane.
Yeah, Charlotte's not a good friend. I'll say it.
Girl.
That was shady. Not a girl's girl. So Alexander ends up finding Jane. Immediately is like, I would like to offer you a job. And Jane's immediately like, no. Because we figure out that Jane's like, I saw them suck up ghosts. And I got a ghost best friend that I do not want them to suck up.
Yeah.
I'm going to avoid this as much as possible.
I feel like I'm imagining Jane is 16 years old. Helen is 14. At some point, wouldn't you kind of outgrow each other's interests?
Well, I think Jane's 19 in the books.
Jane.
Because she's a teacher now,
That's like sleeping with a teddy bear, which is totally normal. I still do it.
Yeah.
Don't let me shame you. So Alex decides that he's going to use the Brocklehurst murder kind of as a ruse just so he can spend the next few days trying to convince Jane to join the society. He's like, hey, we don't usually hire women, but for you, I'll make an offer.
Yeah, he does trap Mr. Brocklehurst in a teacup, which is also a pretty fun scene of him just smashing teacups into the ghost forehead to be like, does this one work? Does this one work? Does this one work?
Brocklehurst has no fight or flight mode. He's just standing there like, stop hitting me with a teacup.
And that's Mr. Brocklehurst for you.
That's him in a nutshell. That's our guy.
Yeah, it's our guy. Alexander does come back to Lowood over the next few days being like, I would like to see Jane. And she keeps refusing to see him. So Charlotte's like, I'm going to take matters into my own hands because I'm a snake. And she asks Alexander for the job that he's trying to give Jane.
She really is such a snake. I forgot about this.
She's now that I'm reading my notes, I'm like, Charlotte does kind of suck.
I mean, Jane was never going to take the job anyways, but Charlotte does, I guess this is a good friend mode, because Jane does just want to be a governess. Charlotte sees...
But does Jane actually want to be a governess? That's something we never actually get clarity on.
Or is she just settling for the life she thinks she deserves?
Exactly. Because Charlotte's not being like, hey, Jane, I think you would really benefit from being in the society. She's like, nope. Here's an ad, bitch. Go get your fucking job.
Here's an ad. Go get this measly job at this.
Go grovel for this kid and this guy.
Sure, you get free room and board as a governess, but there's no time off, it seems like. Yeah. No vacation. No freezing of the eggs. I'm really into freezing eggs lately. My new company
Cool.
covers it at $10,000, so maybe
That's actually pretty awesome.
no, maybe I'll freeze my eggs. Anyways, Jane.
You could sell them.
Oh, I could. Jane's not
money.
going to sell or freeze her eggs. What the?
That's
fuck
because the
is up with
technology
that?
does not exist in this time period. But we must emphasize it regardless.
The benefits suck, but she does take the job and heads to Thornfield immediately. And she gets there and she's like, something's off.
Vibes are bad here. We get introduced to Mrs. Fairfax. She answers the door. There's a massive scream that rings throughout the house, like blood curdling scream. And they're like, what the fuck was that? Mrs. Fairfax like, nothing. Go to sleep, my dears. Lock your doors, by the way.
Yeah, she goes,
just in case.
She's like, it must be the wolves. But do lock your doors in case Grace Poole wanders the halls. I'd be like, sorry, there's so much in that sentence we need to unpack. What wolves are they inside? Who the fuck is Grace Poole?
And also, where's my room?
Where is my... I just got here. Who is wandering the halls at night?
I've never been to this house. I don't know how to get around it.
So, I mean, Jane and Helen, they are fully settled in. They are going to post letters that to let them know, the homies know that they got there. When they go off into the woods and there's a rider that kind of like falls off his horse and immediately he kind of pops up and he points at Jane and he's like, witch.
And Jane's like, is he flirting with me? Like, actually, though, it sounds like a joke, but that's kind of what happened. She's like, I actually kind of like this vibe. This is cool. And this guy's old.
Yeah.
But we also find out it's Mr. Rochester, the guy who owns Thornfield Estate. And Jane's like, I like him old. I'm down. I'm smitten. I'm cute. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole thing.
God, this whole book is just her settling.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing that was missing for me. We don't really get an arc from Jane at all in this book.
Know. Young, spry Alexander, not old like Mr. Rochester, he has a new assistant he's not really a great assistant. I really empathize with Branwell because I am always trying my best and always getting fired.
Branwell is the most thought out character in this book, though. The only one who really has an arc, which is weird because he's a very minor character.
So Branwell starts off the new position sick. And he also gets their carriage hijacked through some ghost shenanigans. Which it just seems like they pick up like a ghost on the side of the road who starts like vomiting bile in the carriage, which I thought was really funny. Yeah,
this scene was so chaotic and I had fun reading it. They get back to London, back at Society headquarters, and Alex is talking to Wellington, who's the head of the Society now, and he's like, Burnell's nice, he's kind of struggling with the job, but he's nice, which is really funny. And Wellington's like, what about that Jane girl? She might be a beacon, which is somebody we learned that can, like, talk to ghosts.
And Alexander's like, forget about it.
And he's like, well, all the other agents are dead now, so it's just you and Branwell. Figure it out, my guy.
And the Duke really wants Branwell to work, too, because follow me on this. Branwell is like the son of the Duke's sister, so the Duke is his uncle, but Branwell doesn't know it.
No.
And Branwell became a seer. We learned that seers can happen because he like jumped from a bridge. I don't think he was committing suicide, but he died momentarily, and then when he came back, he could communicate with the dead. So that's kind of a loophole if you want to be a seer.
Yeah, you just have to die.
Kill yourself.
Not die.
Exactly. Come back.
Die for a little bit, come back. Easy.
Yeah, you
die
know.
for a bit. Yeah, just figure it out. Reveal here that Branwell is Charlotte's brother. So he visits his sister Charlotte and is like, what's the hap, sis? I'm a member of the Society now. And Charlotte's like, this is my in. I'm gonna take advantage of my brother to get closer to this job that I've suddenly decided that I want.
And Branwell's holding his hands up, little X. He's like, no, you're a girl. You can't get in. No girls.
And then Charlotte immediately gets jealous because she realizes that Jane can probably see ghosts. And Charlotte's like, I don't care if I can't see ghosts. I want this job.
Exactly. So she kind of manipulates the situation to her advantage here. She's like, Jane left last week. I mean, I guess I could tell you where she went, but I don't really know if I can tell you where it went. Trying to kind of leverage her position for...
That's really shady of Charlotte to do that. Like,
I never thought we'd be Charlotte Bronte haters, but here we are.
Hey, Charlotte Bronte in the book My Plain Jane, she's just not it. I'm sorry.
I know.
Meanwhile, we're at a dinner at the Thornfield Mansion with Mr. Rochester. Adele, the little girl that Jane's watching, who has one appearance in this book.
Truly, it is crazy she's not in this more, but okay.
Yeah, Adele comes in and sings a song, and that's the last we're ever gonna hear from her. And then we also get to finally see Grace Poole in the flesh, who's
just like
also
this
a
crazy drunk servant. I love
her.
her.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I feel like we're like not sure why she's still there. She's still employed. It really doesn't make sense, but whatever. That's what we get there.
With Charlotte, we pick up on her scheming. Charlotte is like, listen, you're going to need a plan to get Jane enlisted, and I'm the only one who knows how to get her. So she's kind of part of the squad now.
Yeah, Alexander does try to send a letter to Rochester asking nicely if he can employ Jane instead, and he gets just a letter back that's just like, no. Which is hilarious.
And we get a scene in the carriage where Alex is like letting her in on how the society is right now. He's like, I mean, the king cut funding. And she's like, and then how will you pay me? I would be like, you elected yourself. This is a volunteer position.
Yeah, like the audacity of little Miss Charlotte here. The plan that Charlotte comes up with is that they all are going to absorb into the Ingram party that's going to Thornfield Mansion to try to marry Mr. Rochester. And it ends up working. They all have these little Eshton is the last name they all pick.
Blanche, the one who is going to marry Rochester, is like immediately like, I don't really trust them. And her mom is like, you're a part of the society and working undercover? I've seen a ghost. Okay, you're in.
Yeah, you're in. So it works out wonderfully. Before they get to the mansion, they're on their trek. We have a very weird scene here where Jane wakes up in the middle of the night hearing weird sounds and goes to find Rochester's bed on fire. I think this is where the book took a turn for me because like there's not a lot of payoff that happens after this. This was a weird scene.
It's a scene that happens in Jane Eyre and it's like a turning point, but just cut it out. Like,
just cut it out. See, I guess that makes more sense that it's a nod to like actual Jane Eyre. For me, someone who has not read Jane Eyre, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and I think that the whole scene here is to make you a little bit sus of Rochester because Helen's like, why is his bed on fire in the middle of the night? And Jane's like, I mean, he draped me in a robe.
Yeah. And Rochester says it was Grace Poole who set his bed on fire and is being so nonchalant about it. Rochester is sus as fuck.
I know. So they kept the original scene, but it does nothing for the plot because the plot is not the reveal at the end of that book. So
yeah, this makes no sense. It's nothing. They have a lingering moment, so we're like, romance is blooming, but we're like, no, Rochester's weird. We don't want this.
No, yeah. Anyways, they do have a party later at Thornfield that Alex, Charlotte, and Bran do show up to with the Ingrams. Alex does note that Jane's kind of got a ghost Helen hanging on to her, so that's gonna be a little bit tricky to enlist her in the society.
And boy, do the Ingrams think Jane is just basic as fuck, and they are going to let her know about it. And Helen is a girl's girl and a ride or die, and that's one of the things I like about Helen, is because she's hearing them talk about, like, Jane in front of her, and Helen's just yelling at the top of her lungs, like, oh, I know you didn't say that my best friend is plain. How dare you say that? And she's throwing a ghost fit right now, which is awesome.
I know, I think she starts, like, a mini fire for a second there. Go off.
And then somebody goes, like, I think it's one of the Ingrams that's like, we should call the society. And Rochester's like, we are absolutely not doing that.
Yeah, he shuts it down immediately. So Charlotte steps aside to have a little one-on-one with Jane. She's like, buddy, you gotta come to the society. They're offering you so much money. And Jane doesn't want to, obviously, because Helen is her best friend and she'll lose the job.
Which is also wild because Charlotte has never like admitted that she's accused Jane of murder a mere 170 pages ago. And she's like, hey babe, so this is really going to benefit me and I think you should do it.
Oh my God, you're so right. She doesn't even try to convince her early on in the society. She's like, I mean, if you want to be a stinky little governess, here's the ad.
Charlotte kind of sucks.
Wow. And Charlotte, to make matters worse, this woman who has not been a ride or die whatsoever, she realizes now that Helen is hanging around because Alex tells her, and she's like, so I'm not her best friend? Instead of being like, maybe it's a little weird that my best friend has been holding on to this spirit for 6 years.
Well, and also maybe it's like, oh, maybe I'm not as good enough of a friend because my supposed best friend's chosen a ghost over me for years on end now. And I also accused her of murder a mere 170 pages ago.
And Alexander's like, Charlotte, put your feelings aside. We need her as a beacon. And Charlotte's really feeling something that the Gen Z love to call rejection sensitivity right now. She's really feeling rejection sensitivity.
And listeners, get ready for this because we get another character added into this mess. Mr. Mason shows up. He knows Rochester somehow. He's also being suspicious.
Yes. He's kind of snooping around, and as he's snooping around, Alex kind of runs into him wandering the halls later at night. Alex, hey, if you want another plot point, he's got his dead father kind of on the mind. So he's really sulking around for that. And when he runs into Mr. Mason is trying to wield a key to get into this random ass room.
Yeah.
And Alex is like, that was pretty freaking weird. What the heck was that about?
And Alexander's also a little simp for the society because instead of investigating this or talking about it further, the moment Wellington sends a pigeon for him to come back to the society headquarters, he's like, yeah, I'll do that. I don't have to think further about this.
I know. So he is trying to leverage. He did send a letter to Wellington being like, can I offer Jane 5,000 pounds a year? Which I thought it was a month. And I thought that is fucking crazy of the authors.
Yeah, I thought that too. I was like, that's more than like I make. That's stupid.
I was like, what are the authors doing? Truly, now it's gone too far. But Charlotte realizes that Alex kind of wants to stay and like investigate around Mr. Rochester. Doesn't find Mr. Mason suspicious at all for wandering around. But his suspicions are that Mr. Rochester knew his dad and his dad is dead. So he's like, what's that about?
Charlotte, worst friend of the year, back at bat to try to get Jane to take this job. She's like, Jane, you could be making more money than you're making now, right?
I like to imagine that Charlotte also misread it and was like, $5,000 a month, Jane.
She's reading off like notes off her hand. Looks like it's $5,000.
Let me just pull up the Gmail really quick.
Yeah. And Jane says no and admits that's because she's in love with Rochester. And Charlotte's like backs off immediately. She's like, oh, okay, well, anything for true love.
She's like, all right, well, I get it. Having never been in love and only lived an entire life envying you, I'll tell Alex that we gotta bounce.
And then we get another weird scene here where Mrs. Fairfax announces that there's a fortune teller that's come to visit. Is this also in the Jane Eyre book? Okay. Again, this doesn't make sense unless you've read Jane Eyre, because I was like, what the fuck is this?
So they kept an original scene again, and it is a turning point in the book because we realize that Mr. Rochester also likes Jane back, but again, none of the stakes of like Jane and Mr. Rochester's love story stands up in this. So the incentivizing point of him getting lit on fire and them sharing an intimate trauma bonding moment doesn't matter. This moment where he is posing as a fortune teller, like coaxing her into admitting that she has a crush on him, doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. There's no payoff because like the tone also shifts immediately because Jane mentions Mr. Mason being a weird guy and Rochester gets mad and leaves essentially. So
he does. Meanwhile, Alex and Branwell are snooping through Mr. Rochester's study. Alex is like, this is proof. He finds a letter with his dad's name on it. All of a sudden he remembers that the house that his father was in blew up and someone fled the scene. We do realize this is how Alex can see ghosts because he momentarily died from smoke inhalation, but he swears to God that the person that fled the scene was Mr. Rochester.
Yeah. And we're going to check in with Charlotte really quick, who has all the time on her hands to dabble in her hobbies because she's writing a little story
she is.
About Jane and Rochester. And she's like, this is perfect. I'm amazing. I'm a star. This is great. And
I gotta be honest, I wouldn't find it weird if someone was writing about my love story. I would just be like, and then make us fuck. Make a really hot, horny scene. And then I think they'd probably stop. They'd be like, you gotta stop. And then I'd be like, you don't understand. I haven't been touched in months.
It is so bold of Charlotte to never change the first names of the people she writes about. Like, she was writing about Jane the murderer when the book first started. And now she's writing about Jane the slut with Mr. Rochester, old guy. Charlotte sucks. I'm sorry. I'm mad.
She went from like blaming her best friend for death to being like, all my best friend can do is get crusty old men. No one her age.
Yeah. So funny. Alexander does visit Charlotte and to basically vent about Mr. Rochester killing his dad. Like, they have no connection otherwise. It's just weird that he shows up and he's like, hey babe, can I tell you about something?
Also, this was another thing. I don't know if you noticed this, but this book was kind of crazy to me because it's set a little bit after the My Lady Jane books that we read. And the romance in it was like really sweet, and they would build very sensual moments up. But here was like they'd be fully clothed in the middle of the night, and they would be like, it's so scandalous to be talking in the middle of the night. And I was like, listen, they were always about to kiss in the last book. Like, I don't think it's scandalous. They're talking fully clothed.
And we're gonna get to this because they're trying to ultimately push us towards this Alexander Charlotte like romance. Yeah. I do not get it at all. Like, even in like the subtext of any conversation they have, it felt very forced by the end of the book. Where I was like, do they like each other? I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, so they try to establish that specifically here because
this is supposed to be the grand moment, I guess.
Alex is like, I think Mr. Rochester killed my dad. And Charlotte's like, we will stay here and keep lying. And then they hear someone yelling in the hall. This is literally the scene that they wanted with Mr. Rochester getting set on fire, but they didn't need that. So they hear someone yelling in the hall. And they notice Jane and Mr. Mason are not there.
And Rochester's just going, it's fine. It's nothing. It's good. Go back to bed.
Yeah, I'm sorry, no one doubts him.
Like, this book just kind of gets insane because it's like things just start happening between the moment
truly
of Charlotte
buckle up for the rest of this podcast episode.
Between Charlotte and Alexander talking and then this scream in the middle of the night. 5 pages have passed. That's not a lot of time for all of this to go down. It's insane.
Okay, and so we rev it right up. Mr. Mason is seemingly bleeding out. He's been stabbed.
And instead of getting any of like the servants or anything who might have like some knowledge of how to bandage wounds, he wakes up Jane in the middle of the night, says, come look at this guy, he's bleeding. You stay. I'm going to go get a doctor. So she just sits there and waits.
She's sitting there. Helen is like trying to get through this wall/door. She can't get to the other side of it. And there's full-blown screaming on the other side of it.
But a doctor comes and it's fine. So
Rochester tends to like everyone's needs. He is, I guess everyone just kind of is like fine with it. They're like, okay, he's kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, Alexander and Charlotte are finally like, we should maybe say something to Jane about this. And they're like, oh, we think Rochester's kind of a suspicious guy. And Rochester, I guess being not a suspicious guy, overhears this and kicks them out, which is the most suspicious thing you can possibly do.
I know. Instead of being like, you're right, I have been a little weird, he's like, oh, worm? You don't like me? Okay, then you get out.
Oh, you think I'm suspicious? How's this? Get the fuck out of my house.
I would turn to Jane and be like, that confirms
That's
it.
What I'm talking about.
That's the weird shit he's doing.
Isn't that weird? If he wasn't suspicious, he'd just be like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. Let's talk about it.
So Alex is like, you know what? Fine. We can't fight this anymore. But we need to question Mr. Mason because he's on the way to the doctor.
And they somehow end up at a shipyard. This scene makes no sense because like their next logical course of reasoning is like, we gotta race to the shipyard to get Mr. Mason.
This entire scene, I feel like I have to skip over. It's like watching someone slip on a banana peel for 10 pages.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going slapstick, but it gets really weird because like in the midst of trying to catch Mr. Mason on all of these ships that are departing, Bran accidentally possesses himself with the teacup from Mr. Brocklehurst.
Yeah.
Which is also like, why didn't they put that in the society headquarters immediately after they caught him? Because they went there immediately after they caught him. Why has he been carrying a teacup around this entire book? And it's weird.
It's so they obviously don't get to Mr. Mason before he takes off because again, it's like a banana peel slip, and then they go and have their who's on first moment in London with the Duke of Wellington where he's like, "Oh, Jane, it's so nice to see you." And
Charlotte's like, "This is all I've ever wanted."
Because he hasn't like fully pronounced Jane's name yet. So Charlotte thinks that he's just talking well about her. And then she gets rejection sensitivity again.
Yeah. And then we also get a lot of backstory about the society that we should have gotten, I think, when the society was first introduced. We get taken to this room where they used to call it, like, the move-on room, which is where they used to have beacons or recite some sort of spell to get these ghosts in their talisman to move on. But they have no beacons right now, which is why Jane is so important.
Yes. And also, it could probably get funding back to the society. Bran does get fired for getting possessed.
His whole banana peel moment.
His whole wicka moment.
But enough about Bran being fired, because we're throwing another wrench into things. Jane gets a letter that her aunt is sick and dying.
Again, why include? It does not matter. Oh my god. So the aunt was like pretty paramount to the original book, and
she's not in this book at all.
Doesn't matter. Pretty horrible to Jane. So Jane goes to see her Aunt Reed, and since her Aunt Reed has died a few times, she's this year too. I mean, like, truly, the whole moral of this story is that Jane has another family, and when the head of household died, the aunt did not tell Jane that she had this other family, so Jane inherited £20,000, which, in the book, if you know that her and Mr. Rosenfield are having a love affair, it's like, oh, she could leave and be fine, but she chooses to stay and be rich with him. You know, like, that's the whole point for the £20,000.
Yeah,
she could be independent.
This just feels like, a weird moment that doesn't really pay off or anything. When she gets back, Rochester's like, "Thank goodness you're here. Let's just go on a walk." And he's like, "I wish to marry you." And Helen, of course, on this walk as well, is like, "Girl, let's think about this for a second," because Helen's a good friend. She wants to, have us check ourselves before we wreck ourselves.
She's like, he's got weirdo vibes.
And she's not wrong, because even though Jane is like, asks to like think about it for the day, and she's probably going to say yes, Rochester refuses that answer and throws a pearl necklace on her that possesses her with the spirit of, we don't know. We don't know who she's possessed by. We literally
never figure it out.
And we never find out. That was one of the things that also pissed me off about the book. I was like, who was in the pearl necklace?
So this ghost says yes to him. That cunt.
That cunt.
Alex is talking to Duke Wellington, who also Wesley is his name. Like they
use like 6 names for him in this book, and it took me like a second to be like, oh, they're all the same person.
That was so hard. So
I was mad.
He is talking to, I'm just gonna call him Wellington, because at some point they started using
I've
Wellington.
just been calling him Wellington. Yeah.
About thinking that Rochester killed his dad, and Wellington does admit that Rochester used to be a part of the society with his wife, who was a beacon, who ended up losing her mind
shortly after his dad died. So it's all connected. But he's like, enough about this plot point that I just told you about. You should go catch a ghost. So Alex is set off to catch a ghost, who he finds out is a guy named Mr. Mittens, who was a member of the society that he's going to throw into a ring. So Alexander's like, kind of specifically. Yeah, Alexander's like, kind of weird that my coworker died, but I guess I'm just doing my job. Like, he asks 0 questions here.
I know, and I'm sorry, if I had the king's ring, why would you not think immediately, oh, a person who's in the most position of power, are we going to try to possess him?
Maybe.
Idiot.
Also, how did we get the king's ring to begin with?
I
know. Whatever.
So annoying. Charlotte runs into Mr. Mason at the train station. She's kind of having her, like, Charlie Brown. She doesn't know what she's going to do.
Charlotte is such a Charlie Brown. No. She's like, I'm just going to go back to Lowood and kick rocks and write my fan fictions about everybody else's life but my own.
But no, thank God, she runs into Mr. Mason and she's like, we have to tell Alex that you're alive.
And Mr. Mason apparently has nothing better to do, because he's like, sure, I'll go with you.
He's like, I missed my train. I guess I might as well. He does admit that his sister who was married to Mr. Rochester, is still married, and she is actually locked in the attic too.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, Charlotte sees the announcement for Jane and Rochester's wedding. So they got to get back to Thornfield immediately. And this scene moves by so fast. Like, they should have spent way more time here, but they're just running through it.
It essentially boils down to they're at the wedding. I don't even know. So Rochester admits that Bertha, his wife, has been locked in the attic for 15 years. And then Jane is possessed and starts choking Charlotte, and then
she faints,
rips the beads off,
and she faints, and then she's not possessed anymore.
Yeah.
They show them Bertha, who's supposedly crazy, and Jane's like, she doesn't seem crazy, she just seems misunderstood.
I love that. Truly.
But then Rochester starts acting really weird, and Jane and Charlotte are in like a room to pack up her things, and Rochester's like banging on the door. He eventually breaks into the room, but Alexander wasn't in the room with Charlotte and Jane, so he's now gonna duel Rochester. Again, this is all happening in the span of like 8 pages, so it's a lot to run through.
He also makes a bid that him and Jane pretend to be siblings, so that also just gets dropped in there as well.
Oof, what a like punch to the gut to be like, hey, I know you're mad that I possessed you and you're still probably in love with me, but you're probably mad at me. Do you want to pretend to be my sister?
What if we play brother and sister instead?
So Alexander and Rochester have a duel. Big reveal here that we do not spend enough time on, that Rochester has been possessed by his brother Roland this entire time. And before we can really digest this, Alexander is immediately summoned back to Wellington.
Yeah, and you're going to get really confused. So this was his younger brother that he got possessed by, but he also has an older brother, and then he also has a dad, and they're all named Mr. Rochester, and it comes up later, and we have to skip past that because that also confused the
I was
fuck
just like,
me.
come on, who's on first? Shut up.
So they go back to Duke of Wellington. Alex goes to talk to him. He's like, listen, Wellington, I've had the craziest day. And Wellington is like, haha, it is actually me who disposed of your dad.
And I'm a bad guy. And then Alexander's like, what? And Wellington bops him on the head and throws him in a fucking river.
Another banana peel moment.
Which, like, also, did no one see Wellington dragging Alexander's body through the town? Like, the Thames is, like, a popular spot.
I did look up, he dropped him in the River Thames, and I was like, that's kind of a cool river name. Is it like the River Styx, like in
it's pronounced Thames. You don't pronounce the T, the H, sorry.
Anyways, embarrassing. Charlotte, Helen, and Jane. No, we don't have to. It's fine. We're moving on.
No, we're moving on. That's the writer's fault. I'm sorry.
You're right. That one's their fault too. I'm blaming it on them.
Let's check in with Charlotte and Jane because they are lost in the woods.
Oh, but not for long. They're lost in the woods for 2 pages before accidentally stumbling on Charlotte's house. She forgot where her house was, I guess.
Oh, yeah, that's because Charlotte sucks. She was hoping Jane would die so she could come back without her. And they're just kind of waiting for Alexander to show up, and he doesn't. And then Bran asks Jane to get married for some reason here, like as siblings again, which is it doesn't need to happen. We never talk about it again.
He's like, I thought you want a family, and also our dad just died, so it's kind of like great timing. We can just expand. And she's like, no.
He's like, you're kind of hot. I'd fuck you.
Jane's in big breakup mode, mourning, and oh God, to make matters worse, Wellington does show up to the Bronte's house, and he says that Alex is dead. Rochester killed him. It was a whole scandal.
And he's like, and Jane, you should really join the society as Alexander's last wish before I dumped him in that river. Because Jane doesn't even think about it. She's like, well, I guess I should go be a member of the society now.
Honestly, maybe Wellington and Charlotte are made for each other. They are working our girls so hard.
Oof, yeah, tell me about it.
So Alex wakes up. He is fully like drowning in the river Thames. But he is pulled out by the Bertha Rochester. Just kidding, guys. She's not crazy. She was just imprisoned for 15 years by possessed Mr. Rochester.
Yeah, but Mr. Rochester isn't possessed anymore, and so we're supposed to, I guess, like him now. Because he has zero personality. So he wakes up and Bertha and Rochester are like, there, little guy, you're awake now. And then they tell him that Wellington is bad and wants to possess the King of England, and they all have to spring into action now.
They really do. And we cannot get Charlotte moving at all because she still thinks that Alex dead. She is mourning him. And then she's like, oh my God, wait a minute, my brother can talk to ghosts. So she tries to get someone else to do her bidding yet again.
Because she's decided she's in love with Alex, like, now that he's dead. So she needs to go confess her feelings for him to his ghost through her brother, which is like, girl, move on. You've known him for a month. Like, you guys have hardly even been alone in a room to talk together.
I know. Bran learns from... This is the Rochesters I was talking about. Anyways.
Whatever. Just say Bran learns from a ghost at the bar.
Yes. Bran learns from a ghost at the bar that Alex is not dead. So they go to London, and somehow he finds them and tells them that Wellington tried to kill him. And they're like, oh no, we have to tell Jane because she's about to go accidentally possess the king with a ring.
Yeah, and so they rush back to London and they're about to tell Jane, who just got on this carriage, when Alex intercepts them and is like, surprise, I'm still alive. Let's follow Jane to the palace.
So they're going to the palace. She accidentally drops her ring, the ring that's going to possess the king, on the desk. The king asks her to prove the existence of ghosts. She reads like this incantation where he can suddenly see ghosts. And this is where Helen's like wondering, now that she knows that Jane is a beacon, if Jane has just been controlling her the entire time.
Yeah. And Helen's like, maybe I should not be a ghost anymore. Maybe I should move on to the post-ghost time.
And Helen runs off like crying. Alex comes and tries to tell Jane not to give the king the talisman, but unfortunately he's already possessed.
Yeah, it's in the study, it's done. So we have a week of the king being possessed. Wellington's the prime minister. Who would have saw that coming? And so the group's all hanging out being like, what to do? What do we do about this? This is not good. And they're like, oh, there's a spell in our spell book, which of course should have been introduced way more throughout this book, that will allow everyone to see ghosts all at once. We can use that as a distraction.
So their plan is Jane can just easily waltz in as she's like the most important person in the society. Everyone else is going to dress as like her male posse. So they go in. Alex does admit in this moment that Charlotte's book is like really good. They kind of get into the castle pretty easy peasy.
Again, they kind of really blow through this last 30 pages here. It's crazy because they get in the palace very, very easy. The king's calling for guards. They do this ghost spell. Charlotte's glasses fall off, which ruins the whole diversion. So the ghosts clear out. Wellington shows up and he's like, ha ha ha, I intend to be the prime minister. I will kill the king and possess the next king. But then the possessed king finds out he'd be going to a girl's body. He's like, I don't want to do that.
Anti-trans.
Girls are yucky, I'm anti-trans is a quote from the book.
I mean, you guys would believe it. We could make you believe it at this point.
And then we get this insane scene where the group splits up, half goes after Wellington, half stays with the possessed king to get the ring, and Charlotte straight up cuts the finger off of the king, which is gotta be treason in this time period. That's gotta be really bad news.
I'm sorry, I know I'm possessed, but I'd be a little upset if I woke up.
I'd be pissed.
So Charlotte, after chopping off his finger, is like, I gotta go chase after Alex because I lost him once and I'm never letting him go.
And it's there's other things to deal with right now, Charlotte. There's still a bad guy on the loose.
So Rochester, Alex, and Jane, the split off group, they are chasing Wellington. They try to go down this chute because it's a shortcut, but it's a trap. He was actually in the basement the whole time. He is like, I'm going to kill everyone if you don't cooperate, Jane. So she's trying to really stall by asking a ton of questions. And then she joins forces with Bertha. Yeah. And they send flying talisman everywhere.
And then the room catches on fire, and Charlotte is in the doorway somehow now and gets shot in the leg.
Are you confused
or
by all
arm?
these names? Because I feel like I would, if I was listening, I'd be like, I have no fucking idea what's going on.
And the listener's just like sitting there like, oh God, what's going on? Which is kind of what reading the end of this book felt like.
We can't even paint you a picture because this all happens so fast.
Like the lack of imagery is what's shocking to me, where I'm just like, because it was just like, and then this happens, and this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and I was like, whoa.
So Jane and Bertha are like, they're possessing shit. Grace Poole attacks Bertha, breaks the connection.
Because Grace Poole is there too, listeners.
Yeah. Grace Poole has been okay, but also it's never established.
It's never really explained that why she's there.
How?
We know she's working with Wellington, but we don't know how.
Like, is Wellington paying her £5,000 a month? Like,
and also, how did she get from Thornfield to London so fast? Like, that's still a couple days carriage.
I mean, drunk people run faster, I guess.
Yeah, but whatever. But Rochester shoots the Duke as well, so that also happens.
Yeah, Rochester does shoot the Duke. Charlotte shows up. Sorry, there is a stray bullet that somehow shoots her, but there was only one shot, which was Rochester to the Duke. It is never explained that there is a stray bullet.
Another stray bullet. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But Alexander, he's going to carry Charlotte out of this burning building.
And this is when he realizes he has feelings. He was also reading some of her book earlier, and he was kind of getting horny.
He thinks she's kind of hot now that she's not wearing her glasses. I think that's it.
He's like, wow, those got shot off, and then all of a sudden I was obsessed.
Yeah, he's like, when those fell off and you ruined the first plan, Charlotte, you're kind of hot, so it's cool.
So she is like dying, and I guess this kind of makes her a seer, because I think she dies, but she comes back because the bullet...
Her ghost comes out, and Jane goes, no, go back in your body. And so she does. And so she technically dies and comes back to life.
Me seeing you on your way to heaven, and I grab the tail of your ghost, and I just start shoving you back in your body.
Like, no.
Go
get back in there.
We have a podcast to make.
We have things to do, Laura.
We have things to do. We'll never let each other die.
No, unfortunately, if I see your ghost, Maggie, I'm holding on for dear life.
I'll be Charlotte in this situation, because we'll pretend that Jane already fell in love. I need to kiss. So, because when Charlotte comes back, she does get to kiss Alex. Pretty fun.
She wakes up and she's like, I'm alive, and kisses Alexander immediately, and it's like, look, I can see ghosts now too. It's a lot of very, very rampant things, and I guess Charlotte and Alexander are kind of a thing now.
Helen moves on to the next leg
very quickly. She's like, well, goodbye.
Jane and her share like what should be a tearful goodbye, but it's actually a
tearful paragraph
about how their friendship transcends life and death, like us.
Aww.
Kind of sweet.
If I was a ghost, I would follow you around and be your best friend that was a ghost.
I wish my life was exciting. You would just be like, stop watching Desperate Housewives. You just watched season 3 again.
I'd be like, can you play Sims again? I have an idea.
You're like the friend like in middle school where you'd pull up a chair next to you.
Yeah, and I'd be like, what if the house is really, really tall?
Oh my god, that would drive me crazy. The gameplay would be awful.
Can you make it purple?
I would do that for you. I would make it purple.
Thank you. I'm gonna haunt your ass.
So in the epilogue, Jane is living at the Bronte estate. Jesus, and this is where I got pissed off, because someone related to the Duke. She's somehow related to the Duke. She inherits his 20,000 pounds. So she got another 20,000 pounds. They forgot that she already inherited 20,000 pounds like 100 pages earlier.
She didn't get the 20,000 pounds 100 pages ago. Her aunt said, I could have gotten that for you, but I didn't. And then Jane goes, I forgive you. And that's the whole scene. So she technically gets this 20,000 pounds as a makeup for the 20,000 pounds she didn't get, which is equally as confusing and lame.
Not it being the same exact amount. Come on.
Make it 21,000 pounds. Give me something different.
Yeah, give me something else to be pissed off about.
Instead of inheriting money, they're like, you get a farm with a whole bunch of chickens and a cow. And Jane's like, sold.
I love that shit. And Alex, it ends on a fucking... Alex is like, you guys meet Edward Rochester and Bertha's son. Yes, another Edward Rochester. And so
he's hot.
He's hot.
So like that's the thing. It's a very... And the thing is, there's so much potential here, but I think they were just trying to do too much. And so it just gets very, very fast and not like, there's nothing digestible. And the fact that it's been like less than an hour and we've already summarized this 450-page book is very impressive.
I know. It's just, I couldn't sit with any, we just had to go. I feel like I could write this if you sat me down Friday at 5 p.m., you figured out where I was at Monday 9 a.m. and I had just taken an Adderall and didn't have access to my phone.
I was just going to say, if you had a stimulant, you could write this book.
I mean,
and then this happens, and then this happens, and then there's this character, and he's bleeding now, and then there's a fortune teller, but he's her sister, and then...
I mean, it'd really be cooking. You can tell that my brain is truly fucked on its own when I've been doing a lot of coke lately, and that's just, now I'm just normal. I do it, and my brain just thinks like a normal person.
And got a detox, Meg.
I know. I need to get on like antidepressants. That's when you do cocaine and you're normal, that's not good. I'm gonna join the DARE Act. Children listening to this, don't do drugs.
Don't be Maggie, because drugs were cool once and now they're not.
Yeah, drugs aren't cool. You know what's cool? Just looking at a yellow leaf.
Yeah, leaves are dope.
Leaves are dope.
Speaking of cool things, what's the canceled character of the week, Maggie?
Oh God, it's hard because you want to say Rochester. I want to say Rochester the whole time, but then he's possessed, and you're like,
I'm gonna say Charlotte because she cut off someone's finger.
No hesitation.
And she also accused her supposed best friend of murder. And instead of saying like, "Hey bestie, I'm worried you killed someone," she literally threw her under the bus at any second she could.
God, you're so right. That's so Lynette Scava. Again, I'm in desperate houses. I'm gonna go with Charlotte too because Duke of Wellington. That's not even a fun answer. That's just so obvious. I'll go with Charlotte.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was she doing? And if your best friend commits murder, don't like tell the cops. Don't be a narc.
You are a ride or die, or you're a narc.
Unbelievable.
If you're not a ride or die, you're not a best friend.
Exactly.
Fucking dumb.
Well, going off the heels of the canceled character, that brings us to our top 5. And honestly, I will say we came to this top 5 pretty fast. It would be the top 5 talisman Maggie and Laura would be sucked up into.
I like this prompt because it also implies that we're dying at the same time and our ghosts are bound together. So they're like, well, they got to suck both of these ghosts up at the same time into the same talisman.
Here's what happens. We die near each other, and then our ghosts, I imagine that ghosts have the tails like they do in cartoons.
Yeah.
And whoever was trying to wrangle us tied us together like a bow, but once they touched us, the silliness of our vibes killed them. It petrified their souls. So we're just stuck together in a bow ribbon at the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you get it.
We're like cat dog, but ghosts.
Like cat dog, but ghosts. I'm putting that down in the glow in the dark nuns Google Doc.
Yes.
I can't wait to find it again, and it's just those two things, and it never makes sense to me.
And it's just like, no, it makes perfect sense.
I love glow in the dark nuns so much.
Okay, so number 5 on the talisman that our spirit would get sucked up into, vibrator. We have to start strong. Not an expected talisman, but would be hilarious because then we possess anybody who uses the vibrator.
Arguably one of my favorite items on this earth. Please sponsor us, Bellessa.
Yeah.
Number 4, we would have to do a grenade from Bourbon Street. We really haven't had one of those in a while.
And we got to go back to New Orleans.
But when we do, I mean, we're freaking cutting a rug.
Hey. Number 3, powdered wig. Just more surely because to possess someone, they'd always have to be wearing a powdered wig. And people would be like, hey, why is Mark wearing that? That's kind of weird.
You know, people who are reenacting the signing of the Declaration of Independence hate to see us coming.
Well, what's worse, though, is because we're possessing this person who's wearing the powdered wig, is we're coming up with nonstop excuses as to why this person is wearing the powdered wig as defense.
We're like, oh, come on, it's justified. He was being George Washington in a reenactment.
Yeah, we're like, no, and I'm like, we're being George Washington, Maggie. We're the person right now.
Oh my god, I want to possess someone on stage in a powdered wig.
That'd be awesome.
Coming in at number 2, this one is near and dear to our hearts. We would be sucked up into the talisman of Pasta Al Gusto's goat cheese appetizer.
The mechanics of it, don't ask.
God, do you even think they have those anymore? Remember when they got rid of lobster mac and cheese?
I feel like they have to keep the goat cheese appetizer. I'll check after this and text you.
Okay, good.
And lastly, but not leastly, any piece of Coca-Cola merchandise, a sweatshirt, a shirt,
truly.
a hat, shoes, slippers, socks, anything. We'll possess any of that.
And that's going to be it for my plain Jane.
Boy, was it!
It was something.
It should have been. It was something. It was very. It should have been everything, but it really was very a plain book with just a lot of like bells and whistles that didn't make sense.
There was just way too much happening, and I didn't enjoy it. I feel like they really lost steam with the second one. I'm really excited to be coming back with my Calamity Jane next week.
Calamity is a great word.
It's honestly, I'm kind of trucking and cruising through it. So we'll have a lot of fun with. But honestly, this was a really fun episode.
Yeah.
And if you want to,
I had fun. You had fun. We had fun.
If you want to keep up with our fun, you can find us online at Meggie_and_Laura on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We're Yaoi Reddit. Please email us. We love getting emails. You didn't email us any facts about France or Scotland last week.
I'm so sad about that.
I'm really sad about that too.
Yeah.
So again, give us a basic history lesson at Meggie and Laura Present.
Please
at gmail.com. And that's gonna be it from me. Laura, you got any words?
No, just that we love you and we expect an email soon.
Okay, kisses.
Kisses, moi.